There are a few big problems with barefoot shoes. Let's talk about them. Problem number one, barefoot shoes are so darn expensive compared to their mainstream counterparts. For example, Vivo Barefoot, one of the more popular and highly recommended barefoot shoe brands, their hero sneaker, the Primus Lite 3, this costs 140 to 150 USD. You can get a Nike or Adidas shoe or a Vans shoe or Chuck Taylor's for under $50. That is a significant price difference to pay. Now, obviously, the reality is that because barefoot shoes are less mainstream, they just don't have the supply and demand to be able to actually lower the prices to the level of a Nike or an Adidas. Not to mention, they probably don't do those questionable labor practices, which we won't get into in this video. Either way, this price difference is really hard to ignore, right? Problem number two, there's a big trial and error period and a lot of unknowns when it comes to barefoot shoes, especially if you're trying it for the first time. In many places, there aren't any barefoot shoe brick and mortar stores. Like, you can't just walk into a store, unlike with mainstream brands, and try out their shoes. So you're basically relying on luck because you'll never really know how a shoe will fit you until you try it. If you haven't even tried barefoot shoes, you might be wondering, are my feet even going to work with barefoot shoes? It's a whole lot of uncertainty, which can be frustrating and not to mention costly. I can definitely see why a lot of people are turned off by the idea of even switching in the first place because it just costs a lot of time and money. So how have I tackled this problem over the past 6 months? Let me share a few tips with you. Number one, and probably a boring tip, you need to do quite a bit of research. One invaluable resource that I found is from the OG Barefoot Shoe Queen, Anya's Reviews. She has a pretty detailed guide on how to actually start off with just figuring out what your foot shape is. Because barefoot shoes are supposed to mimic the shape of the foot, and because people's feet are all different, that just obviously means that not all barefoot shoe brands will be right for your feet. She has a lot of different terminologies for different types of feet, and your feet might fit that description. And so she also has a few recommendations for certain brands depending on what your feet are shaped like. Second tip, I only buy used shoes. Now, I know some people are a bit icky about buying used shoes, but I won't be able to address that here because I'm personally fine with it. Given the trial and error period and just the sheer amount of people who might have tried barefoot shoes and either it didn't fit them well or it wasn't for them longer term, chances are you might have a barefoot shoe buy and sell group in your area. And that's actually been a lifesaver for me from a cost point of view. I think I've been able to save hundreds of dollars because I've always just been buying my barefoot shoes used. I'll show you here a table of what the price would have been if I had paid full price and how much I've saved just by buying on Facebook Marketplace or on eBay. The good thing about this group is that they're filled with people who might have tried a specific shoe and realized immediately that they didn't fit their feet. So a lot of the shoes are in really good condition. And because of the lack of the brick and mortar stores, it's a bit of a pain to just return them. So people just resell them on these buy and sell groups, which I've taken a lot of advantage of. There's always a bit of an element of luck here, but at least you're saving money. Like for me, I've had to go on and resell one out of the half dozen shoes I've bought from Facebook Marketplace because again, you don't really know if it'll fit your feet until you try it on, but at least it's at a reduced price. And there's very minimal depreciation in the price because you can just resell it for the price that you bought it for because it was already used to start with anyway. Now, if you prefer to buy new, there's always the option of these Amazon barefoot shoes. A brand that I've seen get recommended a lot is Witten. You can get barefoot shoes for less than 50 USD, although in Australia the conversion's a bit bad and it's already encroaching on like used Vivo Barefoot, used Lem's territory, so that's why I've been going used. But I can appreciate that Witten has some pretty decent looking shoes for the price point. Here in Australia, the brand that's pretty cheap for me is called Tesla. And I've seen that they are comparable to Merrell Vapor gloves. So if you like the Merrell Vapor glove look, or if you've tried those and you want a cheaper replacement, seems like Teslas are a pretty decent alternative. Lastly, and most importantly, be patient when building your collection. When you've had your first barefoot shoe and you've felt an immediate improvement in your foot health like I have, it's really tempting to just replace every single shoe that you have. Like you might be like, hey, now that I have a runner, I might need a casual white sneaker, and then I might need a hiking boot, and then I might need a sandal. You can definitely see how this can just blow out your finances really quickly. My recommendation is instead of splurging and replacing your entire shoe collection at once, do it over the course of several months because a few things will happen. One is that your feet might start expanding. I think my feet have actually gone up half a size. So imagine if you bought all of those shoes in a smaller size right away. That would be such a waste. Second is that not all brands and not all shoe models within a brand will fit you the same way. So I think it's better to sort of go at it slowly, figure out what you like, what you don't like, what you find comfortable, what you find uncomfortable, and then adjust accordingly from there. Like, it's a lot easier to do that gradually over the course of a few months rather than buying 10 pairs of shoes at once. Not buying shoes all at once as well just lets you feel out what you actually need in your shoes. When I first started, I just had the Vivos Primus Lights. I then realized soon that I needed a shoe more for trails and hiking, so I bought a hiking boot and a trail runner. And then eventually, after a few months, I realized that I needed a white sneaker because black is really hard to style, and white sneakers are just a lot easier to match with different outfits. But it's really hard to tell unless you have that need that you actually needed one of these. Those are how I've solved those problems so far. Remember, research is key. Consider the buy and sell communities, and most importantly, be patient. If this is your first time watching me and you want to learn a bit more about my barefoot shoe journey, click this video right here.